everything we're trying to do around the management and around ClearPass is to try to see how we can, the definition of Albert Einstein, right? So the definition of genius is taking the complex and make it simple. So how can you start doing things that are complex, like a network, and a network is a distributed system. So how can you start manage that and control it and secure it in a simple manner, right? And that is a complex task to do. And that's what our engineering and our architects need to deal with every day. So what I first want to do is, I think we all agree that everything is connected. So management-wise, you see a changing world happening. Right? How are you going to manage your infrastructure? All these different components, as we discussed in the earlier presentation already. And we see something like this. This is a very high-level overview, but you can see the old world, where you're focusing on network management, where you do some element monitoring, you maybe have some break-fix tools, and we see that actually shifting in the new world, where you start to more focus about service orientation. So instead of just doing management, how can I react on certain things that are happening, and how can I automate these things, right? And how can I start doing orchestrated, either from the cloud or from an on-premise world? And the other part is, how can I drive a better experience management? So really take that user as the central, take that thing and drive that experience management. And Guido will show a little bit more, and we created this platform for it. So planning, deployment, performance, analytics, security, and extensible service. Also connected with the complete ecosystem. So in their particular case, you saw that they're having info blocks. And what I saw also, for example, is Ekahau. And Ekahau, what was initially always the past, if you had your wireless engineers doing the site surveys, making all this planning and know where the wireless was, you more or less had to do it again in AirWave. So therefore we made an integration so that you now can load in these Ekahau platforms. Actually, I don't know if you talked about that, but you can load in these Ekahau screens you already did and start using them in AirWave, just to efficiency and optimize things from a planning and deployment perspective, and later on also from a performance and analytics perspective. But I get back to that one. So that's a little bit the model, and on top of that you have, of course, SaaS, UCC applications. You have different applications solving a different business problem. I'm not going to dive into these particular solutions. What I want to do is, who knows AirWave in the room as a product? Okay, so I'm first going to explain AirWave. So AirWave is our on-premise network management system. So that is, you can manage your switches, you can manage your access points, you can manage third-party devices from a monitoring configuration perspective. The other thing is, we have a lot of multi-vendor control, multi-vendor visibility and management in there. The reason why we do that is because we know that most of the larger organizations never are maybe a full Aruba house, right? Or a full vendor X house. Because, and even if you want to go that direction, you still want to keep choice on your own infrastructure to make a decision in what products you use in what particular moment in time, because you set your requirement and you select the products that are best for your infrastructure. But if you have a management system, we believe that we need to try and drive as much as possible, giving you the possibility to at least manage these things, either from a transformation perspective, maybe on a migration perspective, and manage them and control them and give you choice, right? Give you choice to make a decision in the future to maybe choose for another product and being able to still have that single pane of glass. So that's what our vision behind AirWave is. And AirWave came a long way. So after the merger of with Aruba and HPN joining forces, or HP, is that AirWave was a pure wireless management product. It was very good in doing wireless management. It was almost zero wired functions in there. So the big step for us was, how can we drive and integrate more of the wired portfolio in the on-premise management so that you can really manage that from one single entity. And that's what I've been doing over the last couple of years, adding a lot of new of these functionality in there. And one of the first back steps, what we did is zero-touch provisioning. Everybody that goes cloud loves zero-touch provisioning. Right? That's one of the main reasons why they move to cloud, is because you can configure your devices, remove them, and automatically get the same configuration back. I always say if you go for zero-touch provisioning, also a lot of people think that they can take the legacy configuration and do zero-touch provisioning. That's a big mistake to me in the industry because it will give, I always say shit in and shit out, right? So think about that if you have huge complex configurations and you want to automate them all the time over, it will be a big, big problem to really, because the moment you start to do zero-touch provisioning, you also need to standardize. You need to standardize a really blueprint and how you configure, and that's why we push so many things dynamically to ClearPass, because we can remove this configuration from the switches. But if you start this way, you need to take that in consideration. You need to take a different approach to your architecture, the way you look at networking. And that's a little bit, because I say if you start to automate everything you have right now, probably, maybe 20 years of legacy components, you need to be very careful on what you're going to do. So what you do here is you can plug in an instant switch, or you build these templates and you build this configuration, either from a switch or from an access point. They more or less securely connect, so we have a secure connectivity because we have a TPM chip in most of our devices. We can securely authenticate, hey, this is a device of your organization, and you can deploy configuration based on templates and variables. So then for every different device, maybe you have a different host name, different IP address, or maybe some small different setting. That's what you can customize, but the blueprint template will be the same, and then the configuration will be pushed automatically. The other thing we do is, because you need to think about automate this end-to-end, right? So let's say you bring up the switch perfectly and it works. But now you have ClearPass. You also need to think about, okay, how can I automate and add that switch and access point into ClearPass to make sure that I can start authenticate users and that it's seizing as an authentication device that is allowed to do authentication from an infrastructure. So what is not on here is that what we also did is create a new workflow. Is when it boots on, it can also automatically add the AP, for example, to Mobility Master, if you have an on-premise environment, and add, for example, the switch or control or whatever you're going to deploy to ClearPass as a network access device. So then you can really have automated the whole chain, people or things can connect, and magic happens. So that's one of the big changes we made in AirWave in particular, if you didn't watch it for a long time. And I'm not going to all the changes, but I want to highlight a couple of examples. One of the things that I found very interesting, not sure if it's the same for your infrastructure, is that you have an integrated wired and wireless view, which is very interesting also to see how your organization is moving over time. Are they connecting on wired? How much traffic do I have on wireless? And how much is true wireless traffic that goes over my switches, right? And how much is true client traffic connecting to wireless? How are they authenticating? So you get this single view of the unified wired and wireless, which is very convenient for analytics on further planning or performance planning of your infrastructure. And then of course you can double click down on specific switches or on wired traffic only or wireless traffic only. But I think the integrated view, particularly from a day-to-day perspective, and also to understand how the infrastructure is working, I think is a very big advantage to have for the infrastructure. This is something we have been adding for the switching, and what you will see also is that Guido will talk about the cloud and talk about central. And what you see is that these two worlds are combining together. They are now still, you have an AirWave product and you have a cloud product, but you see that these screens will be the same in the cloud as they will be in the on-premise management system. So more and more and more, they will come together, and you have an on-premise version of the cloud, and you have the cloud version. But you already see screens, so regardless if you're connecting to the cloud or connecting to AirWave, that a lot of the screens are the same. So we're trying to really give that one different experience no matter where you are. So this is something on the switches. If you click one of these things, you get an additional screen. You can see exactly, okay, how is the port configured, how much power is the port dragging for your infrastructure. You even have a POE view in there. You can immediately see which other devices are maybe connected to that particular device. So you can do true kind of switch management from a monitoring perspective in this particular screen. That was something that wasn't there. The other thing we did is the one that, who has been using AirWave for longer than 4 years, for example, longer than 3 or 4 years? Nobody? man, I shouldn't tell this actually. Then, because there was never been a topology in the infrastructure. Now you can see you have a full topology, and what's really convenient, you also have overlay things. So you can say, for example, if I have VLAN 10, where is VLAN 10 now living in my infrastructure? Even when you do it dynamically. So where is it living in my infrastructure? And where can I see? So you immediately see the path highlighted where all these things are living in my infrastructure. If you highlight a client, you immediately see to which AP or to which switch being connected. You can even position that client in the RF space. So you can also see, remember that I said you can load in the Echo screens, or you can make your own screens in what we call visual RF in AirWave. You can see where the client is being positioned in that particular space. And one of the funny thing actually is we have a switching R&D environment in Roseville. That's around 2 hours from San Francisco. And there was one guy who was always complaining about his Wi-Fi. And the HPIT operator, he's stupid. And then they loaded this, because nobody else was complaining, right? It's like really like a big place where everybody is working in the same location. Nobody else was complaining, so HPIT said they ignored it more or less. And then they load in the Echo sites, and then they figure out there was one white spot in the whole thing because of all the signal, and that guy was exactly sitting in that white spot. So he was right, and they changed some parameters. But it was after 2 years, by the way. So but that was a funny story. So you can see here that gives you a good feeling if users are complaining, are they right? Because you see the lines where they are connected. Help desk can start using it, giving them that visibility. So the view here is this is something that we call clarity, and this is my tool for you, for all of you, to prove your mean time to instances. So what I mean with that is everybody talks about MTBF, everybody talks about how long and how lifetime, but this is how quickly can you prove in your infrastructure that the network is not the problem, and that's your proof to prove that you are innocent. Right? Because as network administrator, we are always guilty before proven otherwise. Let's be honest. What you see here is that a lot of times connectivity problems, and you will see if you start using the UXI sensors, you will see that in almost every environment there is some sort of DHCP problem. And what I mean with that is a delay when you get your DHCP in a certain moment, and that can be because just too many users are accessing it at the same time, or guests or whatever. But you will see that there is a delay time. Meaning, if a client connects and that DHCP request comes too late to him, or maybe not too late, but it takes a long time, he has a certain experience. I'm not sure how nervous you are, but if this happens to my sons, they say, well, it's a piece of shit, right? It's crappy. It's not usable, right? That's the way they react quickly if it is just need to wait for 1 second. So what you see here is immediately how much time it takes for people to get, for example, a DHCP server, or if people need to get a DNS response, how long it takes in your infrastructure to get that DNS response. And then you can start to work from that way to figure out if the network is truly the issue, or maybe you need to optimize your DHCP server, or something else can be wrong. And he does it for a couple of things like authentication, association, etc. So you can see this parameter, that's your mean time to instances tool. The other part is firmware upgrade across the board for wired and wireless. It also gives you a recommendation to maybe do an upgrade, and it also you can set like your own compliance rules. So let's say you deployed a new network, and you did a lot of testing, spent a lot of energy, maybe with a partner, maybe in combination with Aruba. Spend a lot of time, say, okay, this is my golden kind of template in combination with firmware, right? We tested everything, so that you go. So if somebody then upgrades something, or a new switch comes, maybe it's on a lower firmware, you immediately will see this, you will pop up and say, hey, you have an out of compliance in your infrastructure, somebody else is running another firmware, could that be tested or whatever. So you can make multiple of these rules, so you can verify your compliancy for the infrastructure from a management perspective. Now, I need to do AirWave and ClearPass, and I think AirWave, I don't have the screens. But for ClearPass, this is my own ugly slide I made for another event actually. I call ClearPass the spider in the web. If you're looking at it from an architecture, for me it's just not just an authentication tool. It is for me really an architectural decision. So because if you're looking at all these different types of devices that come onto your network, so you want to get visibility, and then how you can get your policy administration on one single place for all your different devices, either Aruba or third party. Because don't forget that ClearPass will always keep a big third party element there. Either from an ecosystem working together, or for example, if you have Cisco switches or Juniper switches, or maybe you have some other devices, you can push your policies also to these devices. Of course, we are also bound to what these devices are supported. We will make sure that you can holistically manage the policies for your environment. And then the last point is, how are you going to deal with all these IoT devices that maybe don't do Drop-on-It, that maybe only can do a MAC authentication? So how are you going to build a barrier for these devices, get that visibility, and push the right support, making sure that your business can keep on enabling these devices to drive further enablement or new businesses or whatever they want to do. So, in general, I think we look at this, right? You have all your policies across your different devices, and we are trying to push that to a software-defined solution from a policy perspective, where you can manage all these different devices, and it will be pushing based on who you are, what location, or where you connect to the environment. So this is my simplistic view on how you need to start working with ClearPass. It's my three-step view. The first one is this one, this one. Oh, that's my update. This one is getting visibility. That's how I would start with ClearPass. You install ClearPass, then you just do the profiling to get complete visibility of your infrastructure. Right, and I have a couple of examples received from you at the end, and that's number one. Then you start to think about, okay, I want to control. I want to start pushing that video camera only talk to the video server. Climate control or sensors only talk to the climate control application. Users talk to the application if they need to. The best thing there to keep in mind, manage the exceptions. Because that's probably when you want to push your security on. Then the last thing is response, right? So how can I then respond in the case something happens, in the case something goes wrong? Because that's also part of your whole security process. And then what we also do is create a full integration with all kind of ecosystem partners. Remember that on the slides there was Infoblox that could I read? So we can make an integration with Infoblox, for example, to use some of their intelligence or DNS security, and they can take action on the network. We can make integration with guest system to do something. We can make, who has a Palo Alto or a Checkpoint or a Fortinet in their infrastructure? So, what are firewalls' worst thing to do at? What do they don't know? They don't know the combination between a username and an IP address. They only know it if they have an agent running on something or traffic is flowing by. So with the integration we did, for example, we know that the user logs on, right? So we know the MAC, we know the device, we know the IP, and we build up this context on the user. That's something we share to Palo Alto. Now out of a sudden you get dynamic groups in Palo Alto connecting the username to the IP address, meaning for the security administrator is now changing for just managing the specific IP address is now connected to a username in their system, which is a very, very strong mechanism also from a legal perspective, because you can collect the data, you know what you have if something is doing wrong. And that's the way I think these networks need to start talking more and more to each other from an ecosystem. When we have huge ecosystems around it, we keep on pushing it. We even have native integrations on the box, but also with Splunk, for example. If you have a Splunk or a SIEM system, it takes, I don't know how many logs for them to detect something going on the network. So what if we already detect something and just send one message to them, say, hey, this is going on in your infrastructure. It also saves a lot of traffic to them, so it potentially saves some licensing, but it also saves, it's much quicker and learning each other. I think that's how the system should work together. That's why for me, ClearPass is the spider in the web. I skipped this one because we already discussed this one in the other slide. This is a funny one. So I received some screenshots from the former presenter, and remember that they had around 3,000 switches. How many? 8,000 access points. So now, this is their endpoint profile database, and they were happy to share it with us. Look at the amount of total devices on their infrastructure. More than 1 million devices on their infrastructure seen by ClearPass. Right? Out of that, you have a very young community here, right? 75,000 smart devices. So look at the difference between, and now nobody tells me that we live in a mobile first world. Look at the difference between like fixed computers or smart devices. Smart devices then probably you will connect to the wireless, right? So it's 75,000, 750 by the way, 755,000 smart devices on the infrastructure. Now you can, if you click on these things, you can also see the different categories and who is where, and if it is an IoT device or a Samsung phone or an iPhone. So you can see it. Now, watch this one. This is their authentication per day they have on their infrastructure. So devices that authenticate on the networking infrastructure. So you can see, I don't know what happened on the 20th of August, but it's roughly about 400,000 authentications on their infrastructure. It's a pretty significant amount, right? That is running on their infrastructure. So that is, you can see the trend. I think the 26th, by the way, is when they send me the screenshot. So that's why, that was during the day. So I think this is pretty impressive in how you need to start thinking about authentication, but it's also good to keep awareness in how much devices are on that infrastructure that you maybe don't know. I finished on time before you started complaining.